Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosovich, Josh McCuistion in studio. This is a fun time. We have kicked George out. He is obviously down in Destin, Florida at the SEC meetings, coaches meetings. We did a show with him yesterday, kind of talking about everything that he was able to talk to Britt Venables about. He's talked to Porter Moser, Jenny Baranchek, Bob Przybylo up at Oklahoma City as the Oklahoma Sooners get underway in Oklahoma City at Devon Park. Coming up on Thursday, opening the Women's College World Series. Plenty of coverage. It's a good time for Soonerscoop.com, and it's a good time for you to join Soonerscoop.com. $1 for 2 months. OU1 is your promo code. OU1. A really good time, though. There's a lot going on, obviously, with the Diamond Sports Baseball opening their regional on Friday night against Oral Roberts as they start their NCAA tournament regional in Norman for the first time since 2010. Josh, welcome to the studio. Is this, I think you've done a couple of the unofficial 40s, obviously.
Yes.
But I think this is the first time on camera.
I think that's right. No, that's not right.
We
We've done
did
a couple
something.
of,
That's right.
Post-camp stuff.
That's right. We did
Now,
something.
I'm usually sweaty and hot and miserable, but other than that, absolutely.
We'll be doing that here in about a week's time, I guess, with the OU football camp starting next week. A lot of rain in the forecast here over the course of the weekend, which means that OU football camp is right around the corner.
Yeah, and we'll be extra humid and just disgusting.
It'll be 1,000 degrees.
Absolutely.
Hopefully OU's playing in a super regional. Hopefully Oklahoma softball is playing in a World Series Championship Series coming up next week. So a lot to get into, though, because team camps are this week with Oklahoma. You were up here last week for some team camps, and I guess we went 4 for 4 just in terms of OU commits that you were able to go see. We'll start in Carl Albert. We'll start up in Midwest City where you were able to check out Trystan Hanes, Marcus James, Tré Washington, the whole host of characters for Mike Dunn and the Carl Albert football program going for another 5A state championship here coming up next year.
Yeah, huge surprise. Carl Albert's really talented again. But
they lose a quarterback, an OU commit, and Kevin Sperry, who's obviously down at Dent Geyer, but they're even better this year.
Yeah, they lost their entire backfield that is committed to Oklahoma.
That's Xavier Robinson as well.
Unbelievable. Favorites.
Unbelievable. So, let's start with Trystan Hanes. You kind of broke it to him in the interview that you can catch. You can catch all of Josh's interviews on the Sooner Scoop editorial page, but Trystan Hanes, now the number one player in the state, according to our rankings, and there's a lot to like, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy, you can see it here on tape. The length, and again, this is a guy that won this, I think had the fastest time in the state.
Right.
And definitely won 5A state in the 400 meters. So big time track guy, but again, like watch him. Yeah. That
was the one that was like, okay, all right.
And that is something that, I know early in his career, when Oklahoma first kind of identified Trystan Hanes, this was the thing they loved about him. They were like, he's not just a track guy. This dude wants to be physical. He wants to hit you. So just an absolute physical, and he talked about it in the interview. Jay Valai kind of bringing up that comp we've talked a little bit about with Gentry Williams, having some similarities with their, again, very raw as a player, but you just talk about having all the physical traits you could look for. Trystan Hanes checks all the boxes, and that's why he's my number one guy in the state. I love Elijah Thomas. I love Nate Roberts. There's some really good talent in the state, but if you said one guy plays at a position that could someday be a first-round pick and has the physical tools to be that kind of guy, Trystan Hanes would be my guess.
He kind of looks like one of those guys, and going all the way back to some of the camp series that we went to with Rivals back in the day. He reminds me of those guys, those elite guys that OU just simply wasn't getting.
Yeah. Oh, and it is. And he talked a lot about his relationship with – this is the only catch I saw him give up all day. And it's – you hear coaches say, like in a camp setting like this, it's almost cheating to run those quick slants. Now, in a team setting, it's a little more fair than like in the, the Under Armour camp stuff like you're talking about. But, again, just a guy that still, like I said, as good as he already is, there's still so much more room for him to grow. But, yeah, Jay Valai did an outstanding job, really made him feel like he was kind of part of the family, that he knew he was a priority, and they closed on him in the spring game. I mean, I know everybody found out later on, but that's when he handed his chip in, and talking to him, that's a kid that's all in with it.
Yeah. Staying on the defensive side of the ball, Marcus James, a guy that I think we became familiar with even over his days with McGinnis.
Yeah.
Makes the move over there, wins the state championship last year. He continues to be one of those guys that I think every time that we see him here over the course of the next 6 months that he's at Carl Albert, you can go, oh, he's gotten bigger each time.
It kind of reminds you remember having that same conversation about Jacob Sexton?
Yeah.
Like, oh, he's a little bigger. He's a little better. Like, every time he's just a little better than the time I saw him before. But absolutely. I mean, like, look at that kid. I mean, he is every bit of 6'3", probably a little over that, and 225, 230. Loves to mix it up. Very physical guy. And I think when he was at McGinnis, I saw a guy that had some raw tools. It was really good. And this is not it's not a coaching reflection. I think the world of the guys over at McGinnis, they do a great job. At Carl Albert, it just seems like whatever it was has clicked a little bit for him. And he looks more like a football player rather than just a great athlete trying to play football. So I like where he's at a lot. Again, I talked to him. I think he said he put on about 10 pounds over the last year, and that you can see it. He obviously carrying it really well. You see him there changing direction, moving his feet around a little bit. It's not a big wonder what Oklahoma likes in him. This is, again, another guy, very high-end tools, real traitsy, still learning, the position. This is not a guy that's played linebacker since the day he was born, but the physical tools are everything OU needs them to be.
You would imagine, too, and this is something that you talked to him about, and you can, once again, just like Trystan Hanes, you can watch the interview on Sooner Scoop's editorial page, but when you look at the way that Brent Venables and now Zach Alley has kind of reshaped the Oklahoma linebacker room, it's hard to disagree with the assessment or the evaluation of somebody that they're bringing in.
Oh, absolutely. And, that's something dating back to, and Kerry and I have talked about this for years. When Brent would have a linebacker in, even if you didn't know the guy, if you saw Brent really working a guy at OU's camp, you're like, that kid can play. Like, I don't know if he's no OU guy,
Sure.
but I know he can play if Brent's spending this much time with him. And obviously for them to identify Marcus, go after him early, when they were in on a lot of linebackers and a lot of guys kind of with his physical skill, like that, the big, long, kind of rangy guy, they were in on a lot of guys like that. And Marcus was kind of the one that they identified early, made a focus of him, and again, there's a lot of reasons because they wanted to have that momentum at Carl Albert, and that makes all the sense in the world. But there's nothing about Marcus that gives you a red flag. And again, the thing when you talk to him in that interview, I made a joke because I got him to smile. He is the most stony-faced kid I may deal with in this class. And I was like, well, what'd you think about winning a state title? And he was like, oh, man. That was the thing. And you're like, this is the kid that's wired for it. He gets what they're trying to do at Oklahoma. He just makes a lot of sense.
I was pretty stony-faced in high school as well. But
yeah, I don't believe
it wasn't on the football field. We can definitely say that. Just in terms of, you saw Danny in high school.
Yeah.
Just in terms of like a comparison between those two.
Yeah.
Seems like maybe Marcus a little bit more quick twitch than maybe Danny was, but at the same time, their frame is about the same, is it not?
Yeah, I would say Marcus probably the frame is fairly similar. I would say Marcus is probably a little bigger up top than Danny was at the same age. But both real big, plenty of frame, and they're not one of those guys where you're like, well, are they going to carry the weight? Big lower half, so that makes sense. But the what I will say, probably the primary difference I would say in movement skills, where Danny I think was maybe a little more explosive, like he could close the last few steps a little more violently than Marcus James can. I think, like you saw it on some of that tape, Marcus can change direction. Like, if running back wants to cut back, he's a little more able to deal with that. And so that's probably where I would say is the primary difference. But physically, there's a lot of similarities.
The thing I love about Trystan Hanes, I love about going and seeing Marcus James, and even the third guy that we're about to talk about in Tré Washington, both sides of the football. They very rarely do they leave the football field. And Marcus James had a couple of receptions, in the big comeback that we were at to see against Guthrie. Had a big reception in the state championship game, as well as Trystan Hanes. He kind of turned that game around with a big reception. So Tré Washington, another guy that is kind of the third guy that's committed from Carl Albert. It was a little bit, if you remember back all the way to when Trystan Hanes committed to Oklahoma, it was when Marcus James committed to Oklahoma. He did it in like a surprise move. Nobody really knew. You were able to talk to him about where he sees himself in the Oklahoma program. It sounds like tight end's still kind of that bit for him.
Yeah. And what I thought was interesting, and it's something that when we, earlier this spring, I did kind of an under the hood of Seth Luttrell where we talked about, okay, what's he going to do formationally? What's he going to do with position groups, that kind of stuff. And there was some tight end is a stretch, but it was very H-backy in a lot of ways. And that's what he mentioned, was saying, they thinking about like lining me up at H-back, going to put me out as a receiver, do some of that stuff. Now, some of that is Tré hearing what he wants to hear. Like he wants to think of himself as a receiver, but he's a guy that's probably going to, they're trying to bulk him up to 225, 230. And, I don't know if he'll ever be like the insert guy, like you've seen with Braden Willis, where he's going to come in and try to, dummy a nose or something. But he is absolutely a guy that can chip you, is willing to be physical. Like it's not the hallmark of his game, but at the same time, and I talked about it in that interview with him, there's no linebacker out there that wants to be manned up with that guy in space, because not only is he big and long, but he's got incredible hands. He catches everything.
Is there like a and this might be just a complete throwback, but for some reason his name just popped into my brain, like a Lance Donnelly type almost?
There's something to that. That's not a bad comp at all, because Lance was never going to be the 250-pound inline guy, but he did have tools. Like he had some things you could use. Another interesting comp, and somebody made it to me, and I mean, OU fans would be over the moon if he turned out as good as this kid was. But Garrett Mills from years ago from Jinx, I know you're familiar with, that played at Tulsa. So
he had a day against Oklahoma.
Absolutely. Torched Oklahoma years ago. So I could see that kind of thing where, again, his primary function would be as a receiver, but that you could do, like, he's diverse enough to where him being on the field isn't a giveaway of what you're doing offensively.
And possibly, and again, this might get like way too in the weeds, but maybe you look at what they do with Caden Helms this year, kind of the exact same body style, I would imagine, from him coming out of Nebraska, out of high school.
Yeah, very comparable. Caden's bigger and longer, but I mean, same idea, absolutely.
Very good. Fourth guy that you stayed up in the Tulsa area and were able to see, a guy that I saw last year at Wagner High School and now an Oklahoma commit, Alexander Shieldknight. And one of the first things that when we get to the video that popped off to me was, and you'll be able to see the difference, because I think there's some high school stuff that we were able to shoot with him last year. He's gotten much bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I will say I was a little disappointed that he wasn't wearing the chrome helmet that you got to see him in. That's a look, man. But no, watching Alex, again, you can see it. Like I think he told me about 15 pounds since I'd seen him last spring is what he'd put on, and you can see it. I mean, it's muscle. Like, this isn't a guy that is doing the wrong things or eating bad food. He is I asked him in our interview, "What's your perfect day?" And he's like, "Well, I got to get my workout in. I'm going to get my pre-work." The whole thing. I mean, he is. There's some meathead there for sure, and and that's fine. But
I mean, we've said it before. He is exactly who you would think Miguel Chavis would go out and recruit.
Yes. If I told you it's a edge player that Miguel Chavis loves from Wagner, Oklahoma, this is what the computer would spit
100%.
out. Like, Alex Shieldknight is that dude. Again, interesting player because he's a little bit. He's not like, we've talked about Smith Orogbo. We've talked about some of those guys that are 6'5" and, real long rangey guys. That's not Alex Shieldknight. He's about 6'2.5", probably 235 right now. What's going to be interesting, and we've talked about it a little bit on the pod last week, is there some thought to saying, okay, we're going to let you keep bulking up, and, as a freshman, the goal is 245 or 250. Okay, after year 2, are you pushing up in that 265, 270? And maybe situationally they could move him around a little bit. Okay, he's going to play some 3-tech, or they're going to, in a 3-down front, he could still play as a 4-eye or whatever you want to do. So, and there's the helmets I'm talking about. That's a sweet look from Wagner.
That's the night that he committed to Oklahoma right before the first round of their playoffs.
Yeah,
state playoffs.
And then had his favorite moment with you as a recruit, saying he was absolutely not going to the game.
He was going to go hunting after the game, or get up in the morning and go hunting. He is a perfect depiction, I would imagine, of what I think of when I think of Wagner High School.
Yes.
Just one of the state powerhouses that is, and, again, much like Trystan Hanes, much like Marcus James, you don't have to just watch him on the defensive side of the ball. And as you saw in some of the practice clips, he gets used quite a bit as a tight end in basically everything that they want to what they want to use.
Yeah, and I certainly don't want to give too much of what I got to see at Wagner. You always want to protect those confidences a little bit.
Del Condit's going to come kill you.
He would find me, absolutely. But there is no question that I think they're going to be more aggressive offensively, and I think a part of that is seeing, and knowing you've got a guy like that you can deliver the ball to. He's going to make plays. And again, it's not just, he can run. Once he catches the ball, you got to tackle that freaking guy. And, at the 4A level, that's a lot to ask of any DB.
that was kind of everything that was last week in terms of the east side of the state. You started out, you're going back up there on Thursday to see the Bixby's of the world, Tulsa Union, I believe. That will be a lot of fun. Obviously, I think one of the state powerhouses when you're talking about, the east side schools, but you saw one of them come over to the west side on Wednesday, and that is Jinx America. And obviously, Caden Jones, Samaj Stanford, as well as, and we talked about it on the Unofficial 40 this week. They also have a quarterback that's committed to Utah and Shaker Reesick.
Well, now see, you're going off old Jinx.
I'm thinking that.
Shaker's at Union.
That's true.
Now. Of course.
I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot.
But I mean,
I was thinking about Union and then Jinx. I got them mixed up.
Well,
my apologies to the 918.
It still feels wrong to the universe to go between Jinx and Union. That's like moving between Oklahoma and Texas. That just doesn't really happen. Shout out to Brendan Thompson. But there is
and Jermaine Lole.
Yeah.
The next true All-American.
A truly, guy that will forever live in OU hearts and minds.
Sure.
But the situation with Jinx is they are just wildly talented. Again, like this is one of the. If there's a better team as far as skill position talent, I don't know that I've seen it yet. So, and we're like I said, we're going to see Bixby, we're going to see Union, but here, you've got Caden Jones here at running back number 2. Just a big-bodied, physical guy. Now, this is one of the new transfers in, Caleb Barnett, guy that won the 100 meters in track, and he's now on Jinx's offense. And there was a play, I didn't get it on camera. This guy, he's dead to rights out in space, changes directions a couple of times, and then accelerates and literally outruns the entire defense. Probably should have had a 2-yard gain, and he turned into like a 35-yard touchdown. So he is he's something to see. But the other guy here are the two offers right there were
number 2, number 4.
Yeah, Samaj Stanford. There we go. Perfect, Carrie. So you've got Samaj Stanford here at number 4, the 2027 safety that Oklahoma has offered.
My heart stops when you say 2027. By the way,
and Jinx has been talking about him, and this is obviously a staff we know really well. They're very honest with us. They've been talking about him before he took his first snap at practice at Jinx. Like they knew they had something special. He's absolutely lived up to that. Really making a lot of the calls today on defense. Like he's clearly a really sharp kid. You can understand why Brandon Hall, Brent Venables, why they like him a lot. Because not only is he talented, but he's a guy that gets it kind of between the ears. And then he shares a secondary with Caden Jones. And Caden, obviously, lots of speed, lots of ability to play in space. But again, like you look here, Samaj Stanford just picking up guys, going vertical with them, running up the seam. There's just not a lot here. And then comes off the edge. This is the kind of guy that Brent Venables loves. He's versatile. He can put him in the box. He can drop him deep. He can really do anything Oklahoma wants him to do. And I would suspect that is why he's going to be one of their key targets in that class.
Jinx, it sounds like, is just completely reloading. I know that we talked about it on the Official 40, but if you're talking about a team at 6A1 that could maybe dethrone Bixby, might start in Jinx America, who knows a thing or two about winning state championships. Also have added the 2 Dillard brothers over from Lincoln Christian, who I know one of them was very, very impressive when I saw him in the 3A state championship game a year ago over at Chad Richardson Stadium. I wanted to call it Wantland, but
that's where I would have done it.
It's always been Wantland.
Yeah, exactly. Caleb Dillard is the younger, the 2027. I'm told Jinx kind of likes him at safety right now. They kind of think that's where he can play out. So, again, you're talking about Caden Jones. You're talking about Samaj Stanford. And then this kid who, like you said, was a standout in the 4A state championship or 3A state championship game last year. So you have that. And then, again, his brother is Caleb Dillard, who is the older brother, but is still just a 2026 and is a kind of physical-looking receiver. I'm trying to think of a good comp for him, but probably like 5'10" and about 180, kind of well put together. He's again, you throw that in. You mentioned the Caleb Barnett kid from BA. They're going to be a lot to deal with, and we know that the musical chairs. Tulsa has always been kind of crazy with transfers and move-ins. Now, everybody, there was a very set sort of rules and how you had to do it. Now it's the Wild West.
Yeah.
And so guys, I mean,
Open transfer.
Oh yeah, I mean, you've got the Owasso Hornets. People make that joke about all the Booker T stuff at Owasso, or all the Booker T talent headed to Owasso. So there's a lot happening in that city, and I think the rosters are going to kind of continue to change.
Taj Overton, obviously, over at Owasso as well. And, I'm sure that we're going to hear more about him here in the coming weeks. And just in terms of, Oklahoma, it seems like is very active with him.
Absolutely. And I actually have a story. It's one of those ones when I don't send it to you, I kind of forget that I have the audio recorded on my phone. I'm like, oh, God, I got to take care of that. So I have a Taj Overton interview. I'll try and actually get that out before the end of the week here.
Very good. That was at Edmond Santa Fe on Wednesday. Alongside Jinx, you also had Norman North, and a name that I think has been kind of maybe forgotten about a little bit just because he is so young, but Oklahoma was active with him early. He camped in Norman a year ago. I think was the first time that I was able to see him in person. But you said might have been the player of the day in Mason James, an Oklahoma wide receiver offer.
I can't think of a play or a way that you would hope a receiver would make a play that he didn't do. Now, I will say I'd like to see him block a little more. I'd like to see some of that because he is – you talked to Mason for a second, and he's a super nice kid, but he is exactly what you think of with a receiver. Like, he's like, throw me the ball as many times as you can. I'm going to make plays for you. Like, that is the way he sees it. So this was the play, again, just the way he so violently cuts him out. And that's against Jinx's defense. Like, he's just carving them up. But the thing, Eddie, and you noticed it when you were going over the tape, we saw him 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And he looks like he has already grown an inch and put on a little weight. So, like, he is still very much physically maturing. And I know that sounds obvious for a sophomore, but a lot of these guys that are premier players, they grow really big when they're young, or as big as they're going to be, and then they just kind of fill out the frame. He looks longer to me. Like, it was noticeable watching him through the day. But again, I thought he was clearly the player of the day at the camp, and not that that's any kind of official prize or award, but I just couldn't have been more impressed with Mason James.
We will have an interview with him put up on the Sitter Scoop editorial page, not to give everything away and what he was able to talk about with you, but when we talked to him a couple months ago down in Arlington at the Under Armour event, sounded like it was a really good relationship, obviously, with Emmett Jones. I would imagine that's a continuation here over the course of the last couple months.
Yeah, you can tell that is just something where they've moved, and you would hope this, but they've moved well past the, how's football, that kind of stuff. Like, it's very...
Seems like Emmett always kind of...
Yes.
That it almost like, obviously, he's recruiting him to play football for him, but at the same time, he's very involved in these guys' lives.
Well, and I hate when I ask, leading questions about people, but when it's something we all know and accept, like, I can make a reference to Miguel Chavis being high energy or being very active or Brent Venables being talkative. With Emmett, I'm like, we know he's a relationship builder. Take me farther than that. What else is it? And so with Mason, he talked a lot about, kind of how they want to use him. Like, they've talked about inside and outside with him. And Eddie, you know how much I thought of this guy as a player, but there's some Sterling Shepard there. There really is.
A little bit bigger than Sterling was?
Maybe a little taller, but Sterling was so long-armed, like he could, he kind of made up the difference a little bit. Just the way they both move, those they're kind of long-legged, but they still change direction really easily, and that's a comp I tend to love, kind of. But it's one that I think really fits him pretty well.
And it's going to be, and he's just 2026. Yeah. So it's going to be a couple years to see him. And you don't have to go too far to watch him if you're down in Norman. Harv Collins Field, just down the road. A school that we really haven't talked about a whole lot here over the last couple years, but I think they were a mainstay when we were doing this, even a decade ago, was making the trip down the Turnpike down to Lawton. Sounds like Lawton Mac has reloaded two guys, Adam Austin as well as Joshua Rushing.
Yep. Adam Austin just on Tuesday picked up a Missouri offer. He's really starting to pick up some steam. He's listed as a safety. Now here so everybody knows number 3 is Adam Austin. That's who you're watching right here. Number 2 is Joshua Rushing, the receiver. What's interesting is I think it may be a deal where they have to move around. Like, you can see Adam Austin when he moves around here a little bit. He is a big kid. He's probably 6'1", 205, something like that already. I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up as a linebacker. Like, I think he could be, at least one of those kind of, a cheetah type of guy. Like I could buy that. I could see that for him. Joshua Rushing, he's been noted as a receiver, and I think he could play that, much as I think Adam Austin in the right schemes can play safety. But I kind of like him as a safety, Joshua Rushing, that is. So I think you may see him move around a little bit. We may see some schools kind of project with them. But, they're both playing in big summer trips. I know Adam Austin's playing in a camp at Georgia this summer. Joshua mentioned TCU was the school that he's going to go down to the big mega camp at TCU, SMU, a whole bunch of schools. It was more of a bang for the buck. I go down there and 20 schools are going to see me. So I think they're both clearly Power 5 guys. It's just a matter of, are they that kind of upper level, or are they, the Big 12, ACC, that kind of level? We'll see. But, again, I think both of them, if they'll keep their eyes open to maybe a position change being a little bit more upside for them, I think that you could really see them maybe pick up more steam than they already have.
It's good to see the Highlanders back.
Yeah.
It's such a good football program, and it's been so consistent over the last 25 years, it feels like.
Going through two Mannings,
sure.
Ernie and Brett.
Sure.
So,
Good for them. It's going to be fun. Maybe they can challenge Carl Albert in 5A this year.
I love it. Carl Albert needs some tests. They just do.
Guthrie was great this year, but
Absolutely.
at the same time, it's a different level
Yep.
skill set of athlete that
Yep.
maybe you're going to need if you're going to go beat them.
Yeah. Mike Dunn, I know you're screaming at the camera right now. We know, buddy, but you need to be pushed.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think for a long time, just as much in 6A1 as people have been wanting somebody to push Bixby, maybe
Yep.
Jinx is going to be that team this year. Maybe Lawton Mac can be that team in 5A. Real quick, I guess we'll have to travel back in time just a little bit, but you were able to see Choctaw at school, and Jake Corbin does an exceptional job over there with the Yellow Jackets. It seems like they are reloading here over the last couple years.
Yeah, over the last few years, a lot of the names that we were always familiar with, the Steel Wassels, the name I say
Jordan Mukes.
Yes, and there was the kid who went to Oklahoma State last year, whose name I'm just going to blank out on because I said I was familiar with the name.
That's right.
That's
I know who you're talking
that's
about.
That's the price I'm paying. Yeah. So anyway, they are kind of seeing some turnover. They've got a lot of experience, but it's not in the names that you know. Now, the guy we're watching here is Dejon Green, who I went and saw. Choctaw was my first stop of the Oklahoma few weeks I'm going to spend up here seeing different guys. Dejon Green is, for those who remember Jordan Mukes, who Eddie just mentioned, the people at Choctaw will tell you he is bigger than Jordan Mukes was at the same time. And Jordan Mukes was a space alien. Just a huge guy. I think when he ended at Choctaw, I think he was like 6'1", 6'2", and like 210 pounds. So Dejon Green, I think, is a more natural player right now. You watch him move around. You watch his feet. He's actually a high jumper on the track team. So, and that's more of a product of Choctaw working and wanting their athletes to always be in track. But again, he went over 6 feet, doesn't really know what he's doing. So it speaks to some level of athleticism here. But just a big guy that I actually, since the time I saw him, has picked up a couple of offers. I think he's going to pick up one from Tulsa this summer. And then actually sounds like he's going to camp at Oklahoma now, which was not part of the plans, when I saw him. So he's starting to pick up a little momentum, and we'll see what that can go to. I've talked to some people around Norman, and, I think their question is the same as mine. How does he run? If he can go run like a real time, he could be an OU level guy like that. I think that is in the cards for him. We just don't know.
Sure. Shane Hawk's son, Titus Hawk, is also another guy that he was in the very last clip there. If we want to bring that back up, Carrie. Obviously, Shane Hawk was an Oklahoma State pitcher, played a little bit in the majors, or got drafted into the professional ranks, I think twice, actually. He's in the Oklahoma State Hall of Fame. He's now the head coach for the Choctaw baseball team, but sounds like Titus Hawk, number 17
right
here, is somebody to keep an eye on here over the next couple years.
Yeah, trying to remember. I know that looks like a big, skinny kid running around right now. That's a freshman in high school.
That's crazy.
So he's every bit of 6'4", 6'5", really big kid. he was actually the first person that Jake Corbin pointed out to me. He's like,
no kidding.
He's going to be a guy.
Yeah.
And so you're like, okay. And, again, Jake Corbin's putting out Division I guys almost every year at Choctaw now. He knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's looking at. And I just think that we know it'll come down to a question of baseball because he clearly is a very talented baseball player from everything that we understand at this super early point.
Right.
But I think football's going to be there for him. If that's something he'd like to do, maybe try and do both, as we've seen some guys do in recent years. But Titus Hawk is a big, soft-handed guy that runs really well. You can find a way to get a guy like that on the field.
Deshaun Brown.
Yep.
Signed with Oklahoma State last year from Choctaw High School. Our apologies to the Yellow Jacket community.
Yeah. Send your hate mail to Eddie.
Yeah, 100%. It'll go in the trash like most hate mail usually goes. But I'm well equipped to handle that kind of stuff. Just in terms of other guys that you saw, I know that we put a bunch of focus on, obviously, the guys that Oklahoma's involved with. Sure. Grady Adamson from Deer Creek's one of the names that comes to mind. I know that you said Stillwater has a couple young guys as well.
Yeah. Stillwater's got a 2026 defensive lineman. Nehemiah Cologne is his name. He's got like Oklahoma State, Arizona. Arizona's kind of got a new presence in the state. We haven't seen that before, but they,
as they make the move, I would imagine that they want to recruit this area.
And you throw that on top of obviously beating Oklahoma in the bowl game. There's some credibility there. So I think he is going to be a really interesting guy. He's probably about 6'3", 255, 260 right now. Real active. Stillwater, if you haven't seen him, Stillwater will run a 3 down, they'll run a 4 down, and then all of a sudden they'll run a no down. And it's like 7 guys along the line of scrimmage, and you don't know who's coming, who's not coming. It's a real hot package. And you could see the quarterbacks of this camp just like eyes bulging at some of the looks they were getting. But
dude, you won the 6A2 last year. Can you not just leave us alone?
Yeah,
this is spring football.
Yeah, just give us a second to breathe. But the one guy who clearly had seen it before was Grady Adamson at Deer Creek, who if I'm not mistaken, that's who Stillwater knocked out in the semis.
Yes, I believe so.
So Grady had seen it before. Guy, Eddie, we're both some of his biggest fans. Like we just think
Grady
the world
Adamson
of his talent. But the thing I will say today, and it's probably the longest I've really had a chance to sit down and really watch him in probably about a year, and I just want to see him be more consistent because I thought he threw some deep balls that were gorgeous, just absolutely what you would expect from a Power 5 quarterback. But at the same time, he would then kind of turn around and he'd miss the layup. And so you're just like, just be a little more solid from play to play. Now, I think some of that was Deer Creek's offensive line. They were taking on water a couple of times. Sure. And so I think that threw him off a little bit. But the job that Wade Stanley has done there, they'll get that right. Grady Adamson will have a huge senior year. Like that'll all come together. But yeah, again, I like them. I did want to mention one other guy, again, to kind of travel back in time. Taj Overton, had a chance to see him last week. And as one Tulsa area coordinator that faced Owasso last year said, a freak. He's just, he is probably only about maybe right around 6'2" in that ballpark. So he's not the Gerald McCoy. He's not this huge guy, but he's so active and he is strong. Like when he sets his feet down, and he's doing it against that Owasso offensive line, which we've talked about a lot, is one of the best I've probably ever seen in the state of Oklahoma as far as depth, as far as talent. There's just guys on guys on guys at Owasso. So for him to battle through, beat some doubles, it means something. It's not just a guy, he's picking on high school kids. So, again, you can understand why Oklahoma's so heavily involved there. He loves Todd Bates. There's a really good relationship. So, I like where OU is, but at the same time, I just wanted to give a shout-out because Overton really did play well.
It seems like somebody that Oklahoma not only is heavily involved with, but somebody that you could envision possibly being in a recruiting class here in the coming years.
Yes, I think he will be. That 2026 class, like we've talked for years about 25, but, you look at 26 with Caden Jones, with Taj Overton. We talked about Mason James.
Sure.
So, you just go down like those three I've seen in the last week. Oklahoma wants all those guys in the class.
Right.
So it looks like another solid year. I don't know if you're going to see the same depth in the class, but there's still plenty of talent up front.
Yeah, it feels like the time has finally come that the 2025 kids, it's almost like we've almost gotten to that point where they're kind of, not to say they're old news, but they are kind of old news in terms of recruiting.
It almost reminds me a little bit of the Devin Thomas Justice Hansen year.
Sure.
Where we had covered those two so exhaustively that by the time it got to, well, Justice signing and Devin becoming whatever Devin became, you just saw there was a fatigue to it. Like, okay, it's time to move on. But the good news is for OU fans, there's a whole crop of young guys. We're talking about 2027 guys that already have in-state offers.
It's insane. Thursday coming up again. You'll see Shaker Reesig in Union,
at Union,
Bixby, a whole host of other guys that are going to be guys that we'll feature here on
absolutely
on the recruiting report. Soonerscoop.com YouTube page. Once again, good time. A lot going on. Georgia's down in Destin, Florida, at the SEC coaches meetings. Plenty to wrap up. He talked with Eli Drinkwitz today. That son of a bitch. That'll be good to hear from him. He tried to, I think, stoke the fires a little bit, just in terms of an OU-Missouri rivalry or whatever that's going to be. Bob Prisbillo recapping everything from Media Day on Wednesday over at the Women's College World Series. And I will be over talking to Skip Johnson coming up on Thursday in, ahead of the OU Baseball Norman Regional. So really good time to join Sooner Scoop. For you out there, the YouTube viewer, $1 for 2 months, promo code OU1, $1 2 months, OU1, all you need to do. So very good. Josh.
And this is the slow season.
Yeah.
This is the low time.
Yeah, this is
unbelievable.
I was telling somebody the other day, it's like, we're going to get through, I can't believe it's already the end of May, but we're going to get through June, and all of a sudden we're going to be going down to SEC Media Day down in Arlington.
So I know George and Joe Jr. are not going to deliver for me.
Yeah.
But if you see one of those hats,
my gosh,
I got to have one. That's a must.
They might not be allowed back in the studio if at least one of those gets brought back.
Absolutely. There needs to be one that's not for those two.
Those are sick. Hopefully the SEC just sells them. Why wouldn't you?
They're beautiful. Yeah.
I think Greg Sankey would like more money within the conference, but I don't know. We're the new guys, so I can't I can't speak for him. All right, for Josh, I'm Eddie. We'll talk to you right back here on the Soonerscoop.com YouTube page.